I want to talk about dangerous assumptions in the financial world. Now, you can look at this as a video that's going to be more common sense. It's going to have a little bit of, I don't know, maybe, how sometimes these people play up all this doom and gloom things, but let's look at it from a practical standpoint. There's always outside events that can dramatically affect the status quo and your assumptions, whereby everything that you put all your eggs in one basket have rested upon. And actually, this is the case for anything in finance, whether it's personal, corporate, or at the highest levels, whether it's the big banking systems. Now, if you look at, what is actually one of the main assets that's in the banks is actually that they hold paper on real estate and buildings, which is also considered real estate, but also the enterprise itself and the lifeblood money veins that the corporation that is has the mortgage with the bank, that the bank knows they have a solid asset. Now, things can radically change with outside events. Like if you look at, say, for instance, BP Oil Company, right? What happened with the Gulf oil spill back in 2010? Boy, that, actually Matt Simpson, I think his name was Simmons, I think it was, Matt Simmons. He thought that BP was going to go right the hell out of business over that. And actually, he exposed a lot, and I guess, something happened with him, though he died. But, my point is that BP was subject to an event that came out of the blue. Maybe not, but let's say it did. Same with the airline stocks back in 2001, 9/11, right? It just, maybe some people were privy to it, but most weren't. But my point is that, there's a lot of things going on that even a natural event could drastically change the entire financial world. And everything is based upon a large pyramid structure, one structure upon another, and it's all sitting on a foundation of sand. And this is one of the reasons why major cities are probably some of the most dangerous places to live, because everything, and I'm not talking about, the crime statistics, but I'm talking about everything is predicated upon assumptions. Assumptions that the food will be delivered, the transportation is going to continue, the electricity is going to stay on, and all that type of stuff. What I'm getting at is, though, the valuations of everything that the banks hold in their portfolios can drastically change overnight due to some unforeseen event. It could be geological, for crying out loud. I mean, there's the Department of Homeland Security. I know, really don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things. The Department of Homeland Security a few years ago, issued warnings about everything west of I-5 on California is going to be destroyed. And I know back, I think it was 388 years ago, you have the beaches with the tree stumps that were areas where the land dropped down like 20-something feet. All of a sudden, there's a major tsunami hit the coastline. Something like that happened today. Tech Valley would be done. I wouldn't even be on here right now because the Google would be underwater. I think they're at like 0 feet elevation or something, for crying out loud. If that happened. But, you're looking at the valuations of all these properties and all the banks holding the papers on these properties. And the insurance companies thinking, well, we can insure, we have everything insured, but we only have enough to cover, 2 or 3% of our insurees' losses at any given time. Something catastrophic happen, it just can't be covered. And this is one of the fatal flaws of everything, whereby a lot of the biggest money is built upon assumptions, and it doesn't take that much. And you can see what happened in the 2009, 2010, fiscal crisis, when they had to have the troubled asset relief program for the banks. What happened then was everything was built upon the assumption that, real estate values are going to keep going up. Actually, real estate is, the main portfolios of banks, really, talking about the buildings and the land and everything. And also the strength of the enterprise that's within those buildings and on the land. But, if you knock out any one of those pillars, the whole structure falls down, because a lot of these things are leveraged. It's like they have a protective tranches, they'll call it. There'll be one tranche one that has the best stuff in it. That's where if it takes a hit, we got the assets to back it up. But then if you get down into the meat, where most of everything is on the books, it's not really backed. It's backed up by assets that are overinflated. And, you know, even our Federal Reserve has bought up all these troubled assets. I mean, on their books, they got a bunch of garbage, you know. That's what's actually been holding up the entire structure, is because when a lot of these bailouts happen, the Federal Reserve bought up a lot of these assets at face value. It's, in other words, say, for instance, we're talking on a silver channel. Say you bought silver at $45 an ounce. Say the Federal Reserve can come in there and buy your silver at $45 an ounce. You wouldn't be out any money, right? That's kind of like what happened with a lot of these big guys. But I bring that up is because, you know, who bails out the Federal Reserve? And what I say is this, I'm saying is everything is built upon a complex pyramid structure of, you know, basically pixie sticks. If you pull a couple of the wrong ones out, the whole thing comes down. And it wouldn't take that much to do it. Now, I mentioned a geological event like an earthquake or something, tsunami in California, which they've been predicting a long time. It could even be, you know, something that happens through a terrorist event. You know, we'll use that word because, you know, in New York, like for instance, if, you know, they had a dirty bomb or something. I'm not talking World War III or anything. I'm talking about a dirty bomb. Well, you know what would happen? It would be the, you know, it would drastically diminish the real estate values in there, and actually one of the reasons real estate values in New York is so high is because people perceive the city as safe. I mean, safe compared to a lot of other cities in the world, right? I mean, New York's. I mean, what do you think of the New York City police? I mean, those guys are like they got every freaking surveillance option available to them with all this. They're well equipped. I mean, they're like a freaking small army. As far as protecting a financial district, oh, they protect that part big time. I don't know. I'm showing here the memory of the Confederate dead here. I don't know why I had this picture up here. It's not really related to this topic, but anyway, you know, the agricultural independent communities of the South were a lot more survivable in an event of any kind of, you know, I don't want to call it a financial collapse, but in other words, you know, the worst thing that could happen to like an agricultural area is that they have, you know, locusts come in and eat the crops, or they have a spell where there's too many freezes and it destroys the crops, or maybe there's a lack of water because then they have a drought. But, you know, in the case of cities, you got a lot of stuff you got to worry about, actually. There's a lot of things that can actually happen. And when you're talking about the financial world, it's even far more precarious than what the farmers go through. At least you have some kind of independence. And I'm bringing this up because I know a lot of times these people on these doom and gloom videos, they're saying, well, the system is, you know, Deutsche Bank is now insolvent or whatever. No, this is happening and the Rothschilds are on the run. Well, you know, the reality, and, you know, some also talk about the end of the world and World War III and stuff. Well, first off, I'll tell you one thing. Russia and Putin and the oligarchs, even though they're not really fans of the West, they are integrally connected with the Western financial system. Like Vladimir Putin has a Swiss trading company in oil. I think he's got like $50 billion net worth. He also has, it's registered in Cyprus for the tax breaks. As a matter of fact, the Russian oligarchs used Cyprus for registering most of their companies because of the tax rates. I think the corporate tax rate is 10% in Cyprus. Remember when they had that banking system crisis in Cyprus and they said you could only take out $100,000 or something? Well, the Russian oligarchs flew on planes down there and they got there. That was several years ago. They got all their money out. But, you know, I'm just pointing this out because, you know, it's the fear mongers that say that Russia will do this and do that. You know, what I say, I don't think they will, because, you know, unless they're really, really pushed to something really crazy happens. I know there's some people on this side that really want that to happen, but they're not going to do that because they're connected to the West financially. But what I really think, though, where there's a possibility that could really pull out a few pixie sticks that hold up all the pyramid structures of the high financial world in New York City, is if some kind of rogue element, I don't know if it's a nation or a group of people, ever got hold of a dirty nuclear bomb or chemical bomb and put it in New York in the financial district, ooh, that would make a mess. That could actually bring down a lot of stuff. Because, you know, probably that area could not be occupied anymore. So this is one of the reasons you kind of want to go into a little more of semi-survival mode, because when things happen, it happens all at once. Right today we got a Freedom Tower in New York City. Why? Because the Twin Towers are no longer there. This is a replacement tower. And I know about the 911. I know all about it 48 hours after it happened. I can't comment on that on this venue here, so I'm already aware. Believe me, I'm aware of everything. But I'm just saying that it could be worse. It could be worse. And like for instance, if you're talking about valuations, like for instance, say you got beach property on Miami. Oh, that's worth big bucks, right? Because it's by Miami. You got a major financial district over there, and also, the cost of living's a lot higher. Say you even have a better beach on an island in Malaysia or the Philippines. It's not worth that much money because it's not really near where the financial action is, or the roadways, the infrastructure is not there, and all that type of stuff. Well, you could change, say for instance there was a tsunami in the Atlantic Ocean due to that island off the coast of Africa having a landslide into the water. That's something they say might happen here pretty soon, one of these days, I don't know. And a tsunami hits Miami. Well, in that case, what's going to happen in the valuations of the properties then? They go to like basically zero. That's really what happens. Also, civil strife. Like if you look in South Africa, boy, they had some properties in there, that homes that were like, I don't know what the hell they're worth in dollars, probably millions of dollars, and nobody would buy them today because the civil strife. So that could be, that's that, and if you look at the banks that hold paper on that, it undermines everything. My point on this is that when you're holding physical assets, you really do have a safety valve. In the case of silver, though, I'm going to say this, that if the public ever woke up, and I'm not talking about, the historical significance financially of using silver as money, but if the public actually woke up to the medical benefits of silver, colloidal silver and ionic silver, and if they released some of the exact, exact frequencies and microcurrents specifications for those, where they used ionic silver and a silver probe to regenerate tissue that was severed, and they were doing this on experiments on rats and mice. It can heal the human body the same way because it was producing stem cells right at the point of the injury, and everything was growing back. In other words, if you had a traumatic injury as a human being, say you lost a finger or something, and the whole thing, it would grow back using this technology, which was actually done back in the late 70s by Dr. Robert Otto Becker. If this was known, this is known. It's amazing what's deliberately being kept from the public. But even some of the simpler things where you use colloidal silver to disinfect, if you just had, you got colloidal silver, if everybody had this in their kitchen and they just made a colloidal silver mixture, put a little soap in it, and they're disinfecting their, when they're washing their dishes and they're cleaning their floors or they're cleaning their bathroom or they're using a hospital, there'd be such demand for silver that the price would skyrocket just for these antibacterial properties it has. But it's amazing what the I don't know, what these silver bullion dealers don't push this angle. But when it really comes, and actually, if you're this woman out here in a tent working on her motorcycle, you would really want to have some of that silver with you to make sure the water is pure and you stay healthy. But what it really comes down to is that everything, you could see, everything could turn around in like lightning in the financial world. It's like, you've seen this happen, classic example, 1920s, the stock market crash, right? 1929. Actually, the biggest crash actually occurred later. 1929, the market recovered mostly, and the real big crash happened in 1932, actually. But you do not see it coming. And if you're back in the 1920s, you would think, wow, we got we're replacing horse-drawn carriages with cars. We're no longer making goods by hand. You know, we're actually have machines that make the goods. We got standardization of parts. Why wouldn't it just keep going up and up and up, right? So when I'm looking at this stuff, I'm realizing that, you know, it's something whereby our world today being as complex and so interdependent as it is right now, that it's not going to take a lot to actually change the world radically back, you know, probably 50 or 100 years in technology, where, as far as the everyday person is concerned. It's not going to take that much to do this. And valuations are going to change radically. Maybe this $5 knife I'm showing here might be worth $150 because, you know, everybody's going to think like, hey, I need a handy little instrument like this, you know, for, I don't know, cutting a rope or something, you know, making some, you know, kindling for fires or whatever it is, you know. You see what I'm saying? And some of the other things that some people have that they think they need the latest, greatest game app for their cell phone, it's going to be worth as garbage. And that's really how it's going to work also in the financial world, because unexpected things can happen. And it's not just because the stock market crashed. I know that's one of the things that they push on these doom and gloom videos, that financial system's ready to crash. And well, you know what? It could be a geological event. It could be a solar flare, which, you know, we're coming into the mini ice age right now, which is, you know, more solar flare disturbances from the sun, more magnetic disturbances from the earth, which actually causes earthquakes and tidal waves. More of that. Not saying everything's going to fall apart, but if it hits an area that is a financial district, well, it's going to be a problem, because everything is predicated, one thing is predicated upon another thing. They're all interrelated. It's like the whole financial world today. It's not just the numbers. It's something, and even if it's not a world war, big major war, if it's just one huge terrorist attack with a dirty bomb, and it could be London, it could be, you know, in Malaysia or something, in one of the financial districts, it could be New York, it could be something like that, right? Anything like that could really, it could be in Tokyo, it could be something like that, and it could really upset the apple cart for everywhere across the world. I know that people know this, but the thing is, reality is that we are actually living in a fairly dangerous world right now, even though I don't want to worry people, and I'm not playing a game like the other people are playing with, you know, oh, the sky's falling. But this is the reality of the situation. And this is why you should always have one foot, not both feet, one foot in the prepper type stuff. You know, it's always, and even in the case where, you know, it's a hurricane or an earthquake or a snowstorm that knocks in a blizzard and an ice storm knocks your power out, it's always good to have some prepper stuff. There's no doubt about it. And the other thing is, independence is part of your, it's really your freedom. If you're not just financially independent, but also in a real world independent, where you have food, clothing, shelter, heat, and all this light and electricity and all your essentials that you can run yourself, and water. So reality is that, but in the financial world, and you're talking, you know, if you're in Wall Street and something happened with a solar flare or something and knocked out part of the grid system for a few days, it wouldn't affect me. But, you know, if you're in Wall Street and you're in a financial district and you're up in JP Morgan Chase or Mellon Bank or New York Mellon Bank or something, you could be in a lot of danger, because it could be a big mess. In my case, I have my Gorilla Tape and I have my S-Wing axe and I have my, you know what I'm saying. This is one of the reasons you want to have the silver. But, you know, another product I picked, I know a lot of people see on my channel, I always push this Parazapper. But the Parazapper, besides the colloidal silver actually knocks out microbes, right? You know about that, right? You can actually just throw silver coins in a bucket and it helps knock out microbes. You can take that Parazapper with the 2 electrodes, stick it in water for a couple hours, run that MX mode on like the CC2, Parazapper CC2. It'll knock out the microbes also. Although it's not designed to do it, it works like that though. Another good survival thing. Cheap too, because you don't have to frequently replace it. But the reality is, if we went to a world that was a little bit simpler time for temporarily, it wouldn't really be a big deal except for the people that are not mentally prepared for it or physically or don't have the know-how to deal with it. Because if you look back not that many years ago, people were doing things that today, like millennials or something, would find like impossible to do. I mean, most of them anyway. You know, I mean, back in the day, I mean, people were pretty much, the average person was a complete daredevil compared to what they are today, and they didn't think nothing of it. So, I got to say that it's not something that's. It's only going to be bad for the people that are. They can be very intelligent, but the people that are not really aware of all the implications of what could happen from left field or right field. Not saying they should worry about it all the time, but you should have, keeping a blank eye out for it. That's really how I look at it. And people that are too focused in finance and the numbers, and it's like if something hits them from left field, they're going to be totally unprepared. They can be very smart. They can have a lot of money, but if something hits them from the left field or right field, all their assumptions can go away real quick. And this not it just applies to people that are in these niche fields, but it also applies to some of the biggest banks out there and all the assumptions they make based upon basing their wealth upon assets they have on the books, whereby those assets could be drastically revalued because of an event. I mean, there's been events like, BP oil spill and 911 and all this kind of stuff. But the thing is, there's other things that can happen. There's a lot of things that can actually happen. And personally, one of the things I really think that probably can really be a problem is for the United States is, I know people talk about World War III. I don't buy into that shit too much. I mean, anything's possible, but, Russia, like I said, Putin and the oligarchs, even if the Americans antagonize him with their stupidity sometimes, they are interconnected with the Western financial system, right? But if it could be anybody, I don't know who it could be. It could be anybody. Anybody that doesn't like New York, the United States, or whatever the hell it is. If one dirty bomb, not a nuclear, not a weapons grade, gets into New York somehow, well, that would cause a major financial calamity besides the physical damage, because the fear would cause people to take money out of markets, stop trading, and also the valuations that the banks hold on real estate paper. It would snowball right out, because one thing is built upon another thing, upon another thing, upon another thing. As a matter of fact, almost everything is sort of like in the financial world, it's kind of like a pyramid Ponzi scheme. That's the reality of it. That's why a lot of times you really want to keep it simple and keep it more agrarian. But, I mean, there's risk there too. But I mean, the thing is that, at least what the risks are. There's simple risks. It's like droughts, freezing weather, frost, and locust or something, and pests, whatever, things like that, right? Mostly stuff you could deal with, If there's a drought, you can always store up the water ahead of time and irrigate and use different kinds of farming methods. Locust, whatever, there's ways you freaking get rid of that stuff. And freezing, well, you got to make sure you don't plant during the freezing time. Just don't be the early bug out there. Don't wait too long to harvest. But it's still, you will never take a complete loss even then. But in the financial world, things are really they make a lot of dangerous assumptions. And that's really sometimes how they're making the money. They're making the money by taking a lot of risk. And a lot of times, a lot of it is, valuations that, it's media advertising, getting people to bite. If they buy it at that price, then the next one will buy it at that price because you bought it at that price, because it could be sold at that price because it's worth that price right now. And a lot of times the price is just in your damn head. It has nothing to do with the actual cost of the item, which could be applied to silver also. You know, that's why it could super spike, and I think it will eventually. I know it would super spike right now if people were all aware of the medical benefits and antibacterial benefits, in the least, even just knowing the antibacterial benefits. Silver would super spike. It's amazing. I'm not part of the advertising program for the silver. I do some silver videos here and there, but I could tell you, if I was a bullion dealer and I was a real vested interest in pushing the price up, I would get that price up. I know how. Also, Argentium silver, the jewelry, I would push it up through there. Because I'm just as much as a shark as JP Morgan Chase, easily. I could be if I want to be. I could fall right in with this crowd in 2 seconds flat and I have absolutely no problem. Because I got their mentality. But since I got their mentality, I could be their worst enemy. See that? But just keep this in mind when you talk about the high and mighty and all this kind of garbage. Like I said, you look at Roman history. That's pretty good to look at that. You know what happened to Pompey, Cassius, Caligula, Commodities. What happened to them? They thought they were on the top of the world too, right? So, even Spartacus thought he had it made, right? For a while. That didn't work. But, that's why, actually sometimes looking at what happened to Rome is like a good way to look at and apply the situation of what happened back then to today. And how people thought they had it all figured out. And they were very smart people. And they had all the wealth. And they had all the backing. But somehow, events changed. It doesn't take much to freaking topple the elite, because there's other elites out there always looking to topple those elites. And I can tell you right now, I think a lot of the elites in New York have lost a lot of their cutting edge. I haven't. If I was in New York, I'd freaking push these. You know what? I don't want to brag too much because you're thinking it's really ludicrous for me to say this, but I willingly do not go into the financial area anymore. By choice. I kind of have my foot in there. I still go to the CPA firm, but not every day. But if I wanted to, I could really get back into this crap a lot. And I know if I would get back into it, I would get in with the devils, because the devils are the most fun to be around because they're more competitive. But I hold back from doing all that crap. But I do know how to manipulate and convince people of a lot of different things. And I think they would know that, and I would be in there in 2 seconds flat as a big asset to them. But I'm not going to. But I can tell you that since I know how this stuff works pretty much, it's everything is predicated. It's almost like media, advertising, perception, and BS. Really, a lot of it, not just smarts. And that's really what our entire financial world is based upon. A lot of it is perception. Perception, which is really how did that perception happen? Advertising and BS, persuasiveness. And it doesn't take much to knock that perception out. Like I said, it doesn't have to be, one of the things I keep thinking about, besides, geological thing you really can't do nothing about, but, if there's ever like a serious terrorist attack on the United States, especially in New York City, in the financial district, well, it could really collapse the system pretty damn bad, because, like I said, it's pulling out a few of those pixie sticks on the entire Ponzi pyramid, and it can pull it down. And what they're going to have is fluff, and what you got is hard assets. But besides getting those hard assets like silver, I'm going to tell you, I don't want to reveal everything I know about this Parazapper thing, but that thing is far more. I'm using. You know what? I use it about 15 hours a day. I got great energy. Great energy. I'm actually ordered another one. I consider that thing as a damn absolute must for survival. I got several of them. I ordered another one too. But I just want to keep you people in mind that the conspiracies and drama freaks out there are somewhat true. Somewhat. But use a lot of common sense, and again, I want to drive home that point that everything in the financial world is based upon a lot of assumptions. Now, well, this is worth this. Well, suppose it's not worth that anymore. Then, so what is this worth then? What kind of paper are you holding in the bank? It could really snowball it could spiral out of freaking, you know, control really quick. And not necessarily because, derivatives and what's going on today and the debt in the nation. It could be an event. It could be, a solar flare. It could be a geological event, or it could just be some rogue element doing something. Doesn't have to be anything really freaking stupendous to knock the freaking underpinnings out. Just enough underpinnings out to really set the ball rolling. Now, not to say that won't recover. It will recover. But in the meantime, this is why you stay prepared, right? Correctamundo. Anyway, and stay healthy. Keep a lot of vitamins on hand beside your silver. And also just keep some everyday practical type prepping things, which you can use in your everyday life too, besides. Because, whether something catastrophic happens or not, it always comes in handy to have a lot of these things, because sometimes there's a problem for 24 hours or 48 hours. It could be, ice storm, hurricane, power company goes out for a couple of days because a car hit a telephone utility pole and power is out for a day. It's always good to have these things. It's always good to have them as backup. But the reality is, our world can change very, very fast because, again, another thing I mentioned before is that we are very interdependent. Like the farmers of the 1800s, they knew how to do everything. They know how to plow. They know how to build the fences. They know how to build their houses. They know how to cut firewood. They knew how to, dig a well. They knew how to tend to the horses and whatever. They knew how to do everything. Grow the food and tend to the livestock. Today, you could be somebody with 150 IQ working in, New York Mellon Bank, and you're only good at your own niche field. You don't know. You don't know how to do anything else. I'm not saying you're not smart. The problem is you're compartmentalized, and everybody's interdependent. This is one of the biggest dangers going right now. Just as people are interdependent in their specialties, and everybody's dependent upon somebody else, well, it's the same thing also in the financial world too, even with their assumptions. So our modern society could quite conceivably unravel pretty quick. So keep this in mind. It's not a fear thing. It's just it's a common sense thing, and it'll make sense after it happens. That's the thing. People will never believe it until it happens. It's not doom and gloom. It's just reality. It is a danger that, people are getting too far away from the basics, and they're getting too specialized. Over and out.